This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm somewhat more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff. Today we have Dominic Brescia from the Brescia Group, located in the Tampa area of Florida. Good morning, Dominic. Welcome. Please tell us.
Good morning, Bill.
Good morning to you. Please tell us how you got into real estate and your real estate background to date.
Absolutely, Bill. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate that. I think it's amazing what you and Stephen are doing. But yeah, a little bit about me, how I got into real estate. So early on in my life, I had two great parents that were in real estate. So it's kind of been in my life since a young age. I think they instilled in me early on that real estate is the driver ultimately for building financial wealth and building freedom. I always kind of was very intrigued with real estate, and obviously being from New York, grew up in just outside a big city, and real estate was always very fascinating to me, seeing big, tall buildings. So with my dad being a developer, my mom actually having her own brokerage firm, I just kind of knew that this was the route for me to take. And so that being said, I came down to the University of Tampa. I studied entrepreneurship and kind of was able to see a great real estate market being formed down here, which is about 5-6 years ago, and just kind of really saw the opportunity. So with that being said, I ended up staying down here in the University of Tampa. I got into commercial real estate kind of during my senior year of college. Realized wasn't really the route for me, commercial real estate, and I ended up going to residential real estate, got my license there. And then from there, really started building traction and started learning about in-depth real estate investing. How can I build my real estate career? What's the right avenue to take? What's the right approach? And from that point, I've really just made my focus on, okay, if I could just focus on growing my network down here, meeting the right people, putting myself in the right positions in the real estate community, I think I could really have a shot in this growing city. And so from that point, I focused on real estate sales. I came from a construction background as well. I started shell contracting. Obviously, you know, in real estate, it's commission, so it kind of fluctuates the salary a little bit. And so once I realized that real estate was something I wanted to go all in on, I did. And from that point, bought my first condo right out of college, had my parents help me with co-signing because, you know, you just got to figure it out as you work through investing. And then from there, I got into a partnership on the second one. And the third one, I got into a partnership. And these are just single individual unit condos. But obviously, after meeting bigger like-minded investors, I realized that in 2023, it's about getting more doors and acquiring more doors. So I'm excited to do so.
Excellent. Well, you went to the University of Tampa. That's where Stephen went also, as you mentioned.
Correct.
And sorry, Stephen's not here this morning.
Yeah, no worries.
He's in the Adirondacks looking at a property. I
heard.
I think that's a short-term rental type situation. Looks like a beautiful property, and I look forward to hearing how that goes for him. And your parents were in real estate, and you're from New York. I didn't know that about you, your dad being a developer. But out of the University of Tampa, you knew you wanted to get into real estate, but commercial real estate wasn't for you. Tell me why, with your father being a developer, why didn't you head right into, I know that you have a reason why you didn't head right into commercial and you took a liking toward residential. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's a great question. So I get that question a lot. And so now that I've been in real estate for 7 years now, I'm looking at commercial differently in my eyes, you know, in the multifamily space and just as a developer perspective. Being young, coming out of school, I knew real estate was the route for me. But I realized that commercial real estate is very number driven. It's very about the financials. It's about the business placement from a real estate agent perspective. And then I realized that my strength is with people and realized that residential with helping people acquire their first occupancy for primary residency or, you know, getting into a single family investment option. I knew more about that. And my strengths were more into that. And I had a little bit more passion for that. So I just kind of stuck with what I was passionate about, which was residential at the time. Now that I'm becoming more educated and surrounding myself with multifamily investors, guys that are thinking bigger, and my dad doing development buildings, things like that, now my mind is more open to, wow, commercial actually is it's a bigger play. It's a bigger driver. There's a lot more that goes into it, right, with commercial real estate. And so that now is re-intriguing me to get back into commercial real estate. But when I first got into it, when I was in college and not being from Tampa, it was really hard at first as an agent in commercial real estate to gain traction for that quick time coming out of school. I didn't really know, I was taking the risk of coming out of a completely different area, leaving New York, coming down here, not knowing anybody, and going with this guy, Costas Stoilis with Fortress Commercial Real Estate, brought me under his wing. And really what he did for me, which I thank him for to this day, is he just allowed me to just learn from him and understand real estate in Tampa. It's a different market. It's a different beast. And so I just realized early, which was great, and he helped me navigate that, was maybe commercial is not my route for now, but maybe it's something that I could come back to and think about investing in down the road. And that's exactly what I'm gearing up to be doing. So
no, that makes perfect sense. And I appreciate you coming right out of college and then learning. Me and Steven talk about this regularly, where I started small. I stayed small for quite a while. I wish that I went bigger a little bit faster, but I was so comfortable doing what we were doing on the small properties, replicating the same thing on the same style buildings over the years. So there's no regrets at that point. That's what our comfort zone was. Now realizing getting outside that comfort zone a bit, is very beneficial a lot. But starting small is huge. Knowing that you got into one condo, moved into that, then you bought another and another. Where are you now with your real estate portfolio, and what have you learned as far as building that team as you continue to grow?
Yeah, it's another great question, Bill. I want to touch on something that you said. So you said bigger and faster, and something I actually got from this podcast. A little while back, you and Steven brought that up, and he said, Bill, the one thing you teach me from Steven was, go bigger and go faster. And I love that, because as you start off in real estate, and in my portfolio having at 3 units only, now I'm thinking bigger, and I'm thinking that more doors is actually better. Having less doors creates a lot more stress and some issues, because you have one vacancy. That's a big impact on your portfolio. So my plans now with building my portfolio is to consistently grow next year. I want to maybe acquire 3 or 4 properties next year. From that point, I really want to get around people that are in the commercial multifamily investing space, like Steven, for example. Learning is the crucial piece of this whole thing. Acting like you know it all never helps you. Understanding and being open and receptive to constructive criticism and learning from people that have been there and done that has tremendously propelled me leaps and bounds to where I am today. And because I have that open mindset, I think that I will continue to have a lot of success with my investing endeavors. I want to, again, acquire more units. And with having my real estate team, it is allowing me to have a little bit more free time. Obviously, being an agent, you're running around like crazy. You're helping clients, things like that. But I think I was so focused on helping so many clients of mine get investment properties that I took that opportunity away from myself. And now with building this team, I think it's going to allow me to free up some time for myself, educate myself more in the real estate space, and focus on that niche so my team could really handle the back end stuff, which is awesome.
No, that's a great answer. And yeah, it's about that proximity. If you're going to travel by yourself, continue doing what you are doing, that's fine. You can continue to grow slowly but surely. But that's that beauty of networking, meeting more people, seeing people that are doing things that you haven't. If you want to go bigger, you want to start hanging around with people that are doing bigger. I know that you and Steven got him into a short-term rental down in Tampa, and it's doing so well for him. Walk me through that, from how Steven contacted you, how you found that short-term rental for him, and that discussion of what he needed to do to set himself up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. So Steven and I, again, we went to the University of Tampa together, so I knew him a little bit from school. Afterwards, we graduated. He reached out to me through Instagram, mutual friends, friends of friends, saw that I was in the real estate space as an agent and reached out to me just through there. from that point, we got on a phone call, which I do with all my clients, and I kind of just get an understanding of what they're looking for, why they're getting into the market. Are you a new investor? Are you a long-term investor, short-term investor? What's your play? That allows me to set up a game plan for them. And obviously, Stephen being a, investor, he's definitely a vet in investing at this point, or at least, on his way to be. It was great to get him on the phone because he already had a really good idea of what he's looking for. And that's great too, because when you have two people that understand the investment game, it makes the deal a little bit easier to be doing. Obviously, he was new to the Airbnb game. I was in the Airbnb arbitraging space for a little bit. But recently, I've been helping a lot more of my clients acquire Airbnbs. And what I realized from being in Airbnb and studying Airbnbs recently is that it really is about the amenities at the house. So when Stephen was going to acquire this home, I made it very clear that when you are taking the Airbnb route, because it's becoming so saturated, what's the differentiator between you and someone else's Airbnb? And what is separating it? Is it the pool? Is it the fire pit? Is it the, amazing customer service from the moment they walk in to the moment they check out? And, from me being in the Airbnb space for a while, I learned early that the real thing where we had success was our customer service, our attention to detail, our amazing amenities at the facility that we, had going as the Airbnb. And we just really honed in on being a luxury type style Airbnb. And, I remind people that when you get into Airbnb, it's not just taking some, tinky house and flipping it and making it Airbnb. You're really competing with like a hotel. You're competing with JW Marriott's. You're competing with hotels, and people have to understand that when you get an Airbnb, it's a business. So that's the first conversation me and Steven had when he was going into this house to turn it into an Airbnb. And basically from the next step was, okay, once you get into this, it's really about handling your systems and processes, right? He's an out-of-state investor. He's got a property here in Florida. He's got to manage it from there because he doesn't have a management team in place. And it actually is simpler to manage your Airbnb if you have the right people, such as a cleaning lady and a property manager in place, just somebody that could facilitate and check up on your property to make sure that everything's getting done when you're not there. But also having the back end support. So when somebody checks in, you could, there's a software, forgetting the name off the top of my head, but it will click. But you could go on that software and basically systemize and automate every single thing. So you can go on there, text messages get automated, check-in, check-outs. You can automate the cleaning lady's checklist or whoever you have in there. So everything is right there in your foundation. And so when you get into Airbnb, again, the most important thing with Steve when he was acquiring this deal was make sure that you're putting in the work up front so it doesn't come back to haunt you in the back end. Because too many people I see get Airbnb and they rush to get it up because I know every day you hold it is money being lost, right? But the reality is if you get it up too soon and you don't have the right systems and things in place, it could basically lead to a bad review. And a bad review could seriously impact your Airbnb. And that's what Airbnb is about, is your reviews ultimately. So,
no, I appreciate that. I remember when he was setting that up down there and talking to me about his storage shed and having to make sure he had everything set up for a period of time, meaning the same things that a hotel is going to provide for their guests. You need to have towels and soaps and shampoos and all of the things that, because people are just showing up with their suitcases expecting a clean place with a lot of amenities because they're choosing you over that local hotel. I originally drove into that area of Tampa, drove through Tampa, across the bridges into Pinellas County. And I know you and Stephen went to the University of Tampa, and he seems to have a love for the city of Tampa, put his short-term rental there. I gravitated toward Pinellas County on that island, and I want to get a short-term rental there. So I'm curious what your outlook is. Are those two different markets entirely? Is somebody going to go to a short-term rental in Tampa for a certain proximity to attractions in relation to the Pinellas County short-term rental where they're looking for the beach or whatever? What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So, absolutely. I mean, when you're looking, right, I usually think so. When you're traveling, right, and you're going, so you're coming down to Florida, you want to stay in Tampa. Do you want to be by a beach? Do you want to be by downtown Tampa? That's going to, everyone has their preference on where they want to be centrally located to. If you're going over to Pinellas County, I think it's a great market to be in because you're also going to be more local to the beaches. So your market is going to be beach related, right? So maybe go with a coastal theme or something like that. That really attracts that crowd of people to want to stay at your Airbnb. The thing I've noticed, by the way, recently that I've wanted to bring up with Airbnb, more and more I hear about it. So obviously, the past year it's been super saturated, the amount of people getting into Airbnb, a lot of investors pulling into the market last year. We would be going after deals for a client for their primary home, and I'd be battling with an investor looking to turn this thing into an Airbnb. Which created some issues, especially with the short-term kind of, the housing situation we had going on where the supply wasn't there. So I've heard and definitely have seen that some areas in Pinellas are putting restrictions on Airbnbs in certain areas. So it's very important that you're aware of these areas where you're not allowed to Airbnb. Doesn't have to necessarily be an HOA. That specific city within that county could say no Airbnbs, period. There's some places in mind, like when I was looking in St. Pete to do an Airbnb, like Venetian Isles or Shore Acres, which is more towards downtown St. Pete, still 20 minutes from the beach. They have restrictions on Airbnb over there. So when I tell people, when you're looking at Pinellas, it's a great area to look. There's definitely pockets. I had a buddy of mine just buy Airbnb in Lutz, and it's great. It's 10 minutes from the beach. He has all the amenities, has the pool, great. He's getting great turnover right now. But the problem is I've heard a lot of people are trying to get an Airbnb, and the next thing you know, they're getting shut down or getting these fees or getting these fines. And that's where you're going to have some issues there. And that will impact your Airbnb tremendously. So again, it comes back to the original is before you just jump into it, get with somebody or really educate yourself on that area and say, hey, can I Airbnb here? And are there any future restrictions coming to this area? Has this been a problem? Has this been brought up before in the city? And you could go ahead and call the local municipality and ask them questions, things like that. They're going to give you the answers to it. But that's what I think about Pinellas. I think Pinellas is fantastic, Bill. If you wanted to get into that area for a short-term rental, I think a lot of people are doing really great out there. I know the beachfront homes are crazy. Some of them are going for $1,200 a night, and they are getting booked out, which is wild. But, there's a demand for Airbnb still. People like it, but it comes back to the amenities and what is attracting people to that house. Is it in a good area? Is it local? Is it family friendly? Does it have everything? Does it have the blow dryer, the salt shakers, things like that? And I know for some Airbnb investors, they're going to say, oh, you don't need all that stuff. But the reality is I've realized that the more effort you put in, the better your return will be and better reviews that you'll have. And ultimately, you'll have more success with it. So.
Yeah, and what do we want? It doesn't matter if it's long-term rentals or short-term rentals. We want our tenants to be satisfied. We want our tenants to refer their friends or family to our rentals. You want your short-term rental tenants to come back next year. So you're able you're able to create that happy customer.
It's a great point you brought up, Bill, because one of the clients I just had, actually, she got an Airbnb here in South Tampa, and I mean, it's phenomenal, turnkey, and everything's right. She really is, her big thing right now. She launched this 3 months ago, and she already has people that were there a couple of weeks ago saying, we're coming back next year for Thanksgiving. We're staying at the same house next year. We're coming back. And that's what happens too. When you create this experience and people feel like this is a vacation home now for them, they're going to consistently say, next year, we're coming right back to the same place. And that's the Airbnb thing does too. It allows people to say, this is now going to be a family tradition that we come to this house here in Tampa, and we're going to stay here every single year. So yes, you do get those repeated clients, but you won't get those if you have bad reviews and they don't enjoy the stay and the customer service. So it's a great point.
And bam, it comes right back into everything turning into a relationship. Life is a relationship. There's nothing more important. And there you go. Now you have people coming back to your short-term rental. You develop a relationship with them. And not only are they attracted to that same destination every year, you've now developed this relationship where they know you, like you, and they're going to now refer friends when they come to the area to rent your short-term rental. going back to
Yep.
a little bit of what you had mentioned in Pinellas County and different locations putting on restrictions. Uh, do you see that in Tampa also? Or I guess anybody out in the audience who's considering getting into short-term rentals, as far as when you're looking and underwriting that investment, where in multifamily we stress test to make sure, okay,
Right.
if worst case scenario happens, we're protecting ourselves with our underwriting, making sure that we're still able to survive. On that short-term rental, do you have discussions with your clients that, hey, anywhere the municipality can create a rule saying that, hey, in this neighborhood, we're no longer allowing it? At that
Correct.
point, it's the discussion about, okay, you either have to sell or you have to operate with longer term tenancy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you bringing that up. So with the restrictions in Tampa, I haven't seen many in Tampa as of right now. The only restrictions I see in Tampa is with the HOA association. So when it comes to any building or condominium in South Tampa, when it's in downtown Tampa or even in the outskirts, they will have restrictions because, again, you have residents living there. And again, it creates a safety concern for people. And the HOA is very strict on that. Now, do people somehow get around it? I'm sure it happens. I mean, if you go on Airbnb, you could find some Airbnbs in downtown Tampa. But if you really looked in the rule book with the bylaws and rules and regulations, I'm sure they're going to have some type of restriction on there. As for, St. Pete and getting around, kind of anticipating, I guess, that the municipality can come and say, hey, we're going to stop your Airbnb. I fortunately haven't had to deal with that yet or have had a client have to deal with that yet. But I just know that in the past couple months, there has been a lot of restrictions from the guys that I know that are really invested in Airbnb are currently dealing with this, saying we're either going to have to sell, convert this into a long-term rental. Some that are doing Airbnb arbitrage, they're trying to convert it to a long-term rental to make a smaller amount of profit. But to them, it just doesn't make sense. So they're actually backing out of those deals. So it is something you have to be aware about. Talking more about, I guess, the numbers that you brought up regarding Airbnb calculations. For Airbnb, you're really focusing in on, what's your break even on per nights, and then also what's your furnishing cost. So it's really important to have a really tight budget on furnishing because you can get really carried away with furnishing. You have to understand your theme that you're going with your Airbnb. Are you going high-end luxury? Are you going like a slower, smaller, $85 a night, just pop in, pop out kind of Airbnb? Are you going for more of a 7-day minimum? So these are all things that you could systemize and set on your Airbnb that we want a minimum of 4 nights. We want, a higher end clientele. So that means we're going to go a little bit higher end with the furniture. We're going to create all the amenities for them. And that's one way to approach it. There's other approaches where people are doing $60 a night, come pop in, pop out, 1 night stays, 2 night stays. And that makes sense for some people. Airbnb will say use a 24-night average stay minimum when you do your calculations. I always try to do it where you calculate your break-even point on your monthly, your carrying cost, whatever that may be. And then I would also look to see what's your goal in return on your Airbnb, and within that, is it obtainable on a 24-night basis? And if it is, great. But also understand that you can't say 24 nights every single night for 12 months straight. Just like anything else, things are very seasonal. So you're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. Some people are doing great during the holidays right now, and some Airbnb guys are not because are people staying at an Airbnb for the holidays? No, they're probably home with their families, not traveling. Some might be, some might not. So again, those are things to all consider in a factor too. Because I know one guy who's doing $10,000 a month in his Airbnb, and then last month he did $2,000. So he's like, I'm just glad I covered my costs. And again, very seasonal, but that's kind of what Airbnb is, the very seasonal long-term game. So
very interesting. So you have the short-term rental house. I know Stephen has that. Yeah. And then you were just talking about that smaller place where someone pops in for a night. That seems to make sense more for that person who normally would just stay in a hotel where they might be in town just to visit family quickly or a quick business trip or something like that.
Yeah.
Does the short-term rental house where people, I'm assuming, I hate to assume, come down and they're looking to have a good time. They're going to have 4, 5, 6 people in that house. They're going to go to the attractions. They're going to have fun. And they'll be paying a higher amount because they're getting much more of a house where that person is just coming in for one night. Is there a difference in risk profile on those when you're selecting or people are booking your rental and the concerns about, okay, I've got 5, 6 people coming into my house, but I have this thing booked to another group of people right after that. And these people are counting on that rental. Where is there concerns about that group of 5 or 6 having a bit too much fun and making it very challenging for you to have that seamless transition to that next tenant in relation to the smaller, less profitable, person who just goes one night in the smaller place and isn't really there to have a party.
Yeah, just coming and going. Yeah, I mean that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up too, because that is funny. So Steven actually, he dealt with this probably a couple weeks ago. He had a large group of people stay at the place, and definitely was tough for the cleaning lady to get everything done per the checklist and get all the the garbage taken out, making the place look like just how it was on the pictures. And that is definitely a challenge. I think every person getting into Airbnb has a story to tell when it comes to the next guest checking in or the same day check in and check out. That happens. But again, it all really comes down to owning your systems and your processes that are going to eliminate those headaches. Sometimes they're you can't get around them, and sometimes you kind of just have to tackle it. I know that I've talked to Steven that, I've given people a voucher to go have dinner with their family to let them check in later so I can get the house to the perfection that it needs to be. Or, it comes back to how you handle the client, right? Customer service. So if there's an issue, I always tell people in Airbnb, face the issue, acknowledge the issue, and let them know, hey, I'm very sorry about this issue, but we're going to go ahead and take care of this for you. And matter of fact, why don't you go have dinner? We'll take care of it on us. It's the little things like that actually go way further that people, I think, overlook. And I think people that are great at Airbnb and understand that it's a business will understand that that's an important step in business, is to always give back when, things might not go as smoothly as they plan to. But it's definitely could be more of a risk when you do have a single family house compared to the pop in and pops out. I think that with the pop in pops out, most of the time with these, if you look, Bill, they're going to be somebody who has like a mother-in-law suite in the backyard of their house. And it's very funny. They just something that they converted into. And I'm seeing that a lot with listings that are on the market right now in Tampa. You'll have a house that'll say mother-in-law suite, perfect for Airbnb. And you walk to the backyard, there's a side pathway and there's a nice little shed in the back that's converted into a house, and people will stay there and come and go, $60 a night. I'm sure that they manage that, and I'm sure that they, make a little bit of money from that. And I'm sure how much are they really paying for a shed in their backyard that they convert into a house? Probably not much overhead, right? So, it's pretty much just cash flow, I feel like, off the start for them. And with a single family house, it's more of an investment. You're buying the house, you have the loan on the house, or you did cash, and you have your furnishing costs that you have to pay back in your pocket. So what's your timeline on paying yourself back and recouping that before you start really making the cash flow? So I think that's the only way to really compare it. When it comes to the pop-ins and pop-out, they're different just spectrums and scales, honestly.
Yeah, and what I got out of that also was that team. Steven's in New York. He's running his short-term rental from New York, I believe, but he does have that team.
Yes.
You have that.
Yep.
The only thing that comes to mind right now is how important that cleaning team is, not only to do a quality cleaning job, because who wants to come into town, you're on vacation, you want to have a good time. The last thing you want is something that isn't immaculately clean from that last guest. So that reliability and quality of that cleaning crew. What other team members other than that cleaning crew are necessary to really run that strong short-term rental consistently?
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely mean handyman is definitely something that you need. Things break. It's a house. Things will break. Having good vendors, so plumbers, electricians, HVAC, again, it's like having just a single family investment property. Just now you have the only side play here is having the cleaning lady that's coming in, 4 or 5 times a week to clean the house. And then also somebody that comes in to just do a quality check. So what I did with Steven is that, I'm his quality check sometimes when he needs it, if it's a long time turnaround. And, I always say, Steven, make sure you get photos, or I tell anybody, make sure you get photos when the cleaning lady checks in and checks out. That one allows you to understand that she did clean. Number 2, it's the standard that you want it to be. And number 3, if a guest checks in and says, the place was left a mess, at least you have the picture saying, hey, what was a mess? Because I have the photos here. So it actually covers you a little bit from having to stress out and say, oh my God, it wasn't clean and who did what and pointing the finger. So you really have to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's with Airbnb when someone checks in and checks out. But you do need to have somebody that you could rely on that could maybe go over there and check it out once once the cleaning lady is done. But that cleaning lady is so, so important. It is very difficult to find a good, reliable cleaning service that will go there, do it to the expectations you need it to, and also provide you the photos and things like that. It might cost a little bit more money, but if you find somebody that's really great at doing it, I would recommend really investing the time into them and getting them onboarded to your team so they could take that on for you. Eliminate a lot of headaches, especially if you're out of state. And then also, if you're a realtor, I like to call myself the one-stop shop for a lot of my clients, is that I do have a great Rolodex of people coming from construction, plumbers, HVAC, electricians, handymen, things like that. So usually when my clients do get Airbnbs with me, I do tell them that my Rolodex is your Rolodex. If you need a contact, I have no problem passing it over to you and helping facilitate to get them in there if you need the guidance. So it's something that I really try to focus in on, because I think being a real estate agent is so much more, especially when you're helping people get into an investment or getting into an Airbnb. I try to give them something more, and that's service from me saying, hey, well, after the transaction, I'm not just disappearing. If you need me and you need some advice or you need some help and guidance on who to get in there, call me, and I have no problem walking through those steps. Like the lady I just did the Airbnb with I helped her set up her whole automation system on her platform. Now, of course, I'm not trying to do that for everybody, but she asked some great questions and she came prepared and she knew what she had to do, and I took some time out of my day to help her out, and I love doing it because I think it's such a great investment tool. I think it's a great driver. Airbnb is definitely here and it's going to stay for a while. I think the whole point about Airbnb is to create an experience for people looking to travel. So,
no, and you're differentiating yourself from other agents where you're able to provide that added value, not only setting up some systems and processes for that client, yep, but also sharing that Rolodex. So important, because yep, eventually I think reality kicks in. It's not a perfect world.
Yeah, for sure.
And people who are running these short-term rentals, you're going to run into the same challenges that a landlord will do on long-term rentals. And that Rolodex of contractors or cleaning people or handymen ultimately is going to be necessary at some point. So creating those relationships with your clients so you're differentiating yourself is so important. Another question on a property that I have down in St. Petersburg, traditionally long-term type multifamily apartment complex. We are experimenting where a partner is taking an apartment in a large apartment complex, turning that into a short-term rental. Have you experienced anything like that? Have you traveled in that? What are your thoughts in that area of Pinellas County or Tampa, or seeing other people doing that?
Yeah, honestly, Bill, I think there's a demand right now for short-term rentals. I had a rental that was on the market, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I think I got more inquiries about people looking to have a fully furnished 3-month lease just to come and hang here for a little while for the winter months and then go right back to either Canada. Well, actually, a lot of people from Canada looking for short-term rentals right now, but also just all over. I have more people reaching out to me for short-term rentals. The problem is a lot of these HOAs do have restrictions. So minimum of 6-month lease, can only do it twice a year, or minimum of, a 12-month lease, can only do it for so long. So those things are considerable factors that you need to think about. So I do see a lot more happening with short-term rentals. I think it's just a demand. So people are trying to give that to the demand. And I think we're going to see more of it, but the more restrictions creates more of a problem with short-term rentals. They don't let you just turn them over as fast as you'd like to or can. So kind of ties your hands a little bit.
Yeah, I'm wondering, with that example that I just gave you, I'm just thinking about it when it's a larger apartment complex and you turn an apartment into a short-term rental. If that's something
Yeah.
that you're kind, I don't want to say you're sneaking that short-term rental into that apartment complex where, any regulation really isn't pointed at
Yep.
you. And like a lot of things in life, you have a short-term rental apartment now commingling with your longer term tenants. I guess it wouldn't be a problem until it turns into a problem.
That's exactly right. I mean, so a buddy of mine did an Airbnb arbitrage. So he went to the owner and said, "Hey, look, can I lease your place from you? I will pay you a little bit more money, and I will go ahead and turn it to an Airbnb. What you'll expect from me is that I will completely furnish the place. I will upkeep it. I will send you photos every month. Pay on time, etc." And so this was in an Airbnb within a larger community, like you're talking about. So a bigger building with multiple units. And everything was good for 6-7 months. No problems. Everything was kind of rocking and rolling. However, when one neighbor started seeing they had one bad check-in, somebody said they were staying with 3 people, ended up being 6 people, which happens too. People do lie and try to get away with it. It created a huge spotlight on this unit. And what ended up happening was the neighbor downstairs ended up filing for a noise complaint. People got more involved and then ended up snowballing, affecting into the HOA association. And that's how they ended up finding out. So then it ended, you have 90 days to close this down. We will be, present. Here's the bylaws to show that you can't be doing this. And that's when it really started snowballing into a very deep hole. So the only thing you could do is shut it down and end it right away and move forward from it. So I think a lot of people are testing the waters of short-term rentals and getting away with it in these larger complexes and buildings. However, I say don't say this is my game plan because it takes one time, 7 months, everything's good, that one time, and then it's shut down forever. So you're taking the investment to furnish the entire place. What do you do with the furniture if it gets shut down? You're just selling it, taking a lot where you're rolling it to another. So you really have to understand that if you take that risk, there's other risks you're taking too. You're gambling with the furniture. If you buy all this furniture and it gets shut down, do you have another place you could roll it into? You have to really think about that before you just try it. And then, the worst case scenario happens. So
yeah, fair enough. This is the Collecting Real Estate podcast. And they say you have to have 3 of something to make a collection. So we have 3 questions to wrap this up with you. First one, in 5 words or less, what's the most important thing you've learned since you've been collecting real estate?
I definitely will say understand the numbers and the location that you're investing into real estate. So it's definitely a very important thing. With understanding your location will create opportunities, and understanding the numbers will allow you to make sure you're buying that property at the right value. Buying real estate is all about buying at the right price and selling at the right price. It's not about overpaying and the long term, not making a profit. That's not why we get into real estate. We get into real estate for the long term appreciation. So
there's the title of the book, Real Estate. Location, 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 right? It sounds old. Everybody hears it, but it will always be the absolutely most important thing. Number 2, what are your 1 to 2 year personal goals?
It's a great question. I mean, definitely, I just started my real estate team, the Brescia Group, down here in Tampa with Keller Williams. My goal for them is to grow this company to be doing $60 to $100 million a year in real estate transactions. My personal goal, besides from growing my team to that size, is really to get more involved into multifamily investing space and the commercial space. Surrounding myself with unbelievable guys that are already in the space, that are doing the right things, thinking big, moving fast. I want to be around those players. So I think my 2-year plan here is to definitely get into the multifamily space and, probably own over 20 doors would be my goal for the next year. So
there we go. What do you like to do for fun down there? I know I want to get a short-term rental, turn it into my second home, and then Airbnb it so we can make it profitable, but still have that place I can go. And what I've been thinking about, I really want to get down there in the spring and watch some spring training Major League Baseball. What do you like to
Definitely.
do? What do you like to do down there?
When I'm not working, I'm golfing. I'm out. I'm just being outside. I moved to Florida for the reason that I don't have to deal with the cold anymore. I know you guys are up there up north, so I'm sure you can relate. That I was calling Steve the other week, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm on the golf course." He's like, "Dude, it's snowing here." So, for me, I like to golf. I like to be outside, enjoy the weather, and just be around awesome people when I'm just not working. So it's all about the relationships, like you said. So when I'm not working, I'm just hanging around great people. So.
There you go. There you go. No, that sounds fantastic. And it's a beautiful area. You can go from spring training baseball to golfing to so many other things, all their professional sports teams, the beaches, et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. That's why so many people are rushing into the Tampa area. Last question for you. How can we and the listeners assist you? How do we contact you?
Absolutely. So you could find me on Instagram, Dominic Brescia, DOMINIC Right on Instagram, you could reach out to me through my email, dominic@thebresciagroup.com. Any inquiries, looking to get into real estate, looking to invest in Airbnbs, looking to learn more about just the Tampa market. I do have a website as well, thebresciagroup.com, with Keller Williams. Pretty much on all the platforms that you could find me. So if you could reach out through any of them, I will respond to you. If I don't get to you right away, I promise I will. But really, if you're looking to just invest or learn more about the area, learn more about real estate, I love the conversations. I'm appreciative to be on this podcast. It's another great platform to be on. I'm glad that I got to speak to you, Bill, because Steven really does have such great things to say about you. I look forward to meeting you as well when you get down here. I'd love to help you with your short-term rental search. So, and maybe we'll go hit a spring training game too when you get down here. So we'll go see the Yankees or something. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody who is looking for that short-term rental just to enjoy a weekend or a week down in that area, or if you're
Yep.
interested in investing and getting into the short-term rental business, yeah, contact Dominic. I know he treated Steven very, very well. And yeah, I'm excited to get down there, shoot around a golf with you, get to know you
Let's do it.
much better, maybe a baseball game, who knows? But yeah, thanks for being on. I learned a lot about the short-term rental game, and
Absolutely.
very selfishly for me, I want to dig in as much as I can because my goal is to get into one here in the first 6 months of 2023. But
I love it, Bill.
Thanks for being on.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for having me. If you have any questions yourself, reach out to me. You got my contact. I look forward to talking to you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it, man.